wild boar, thought to be creatures of remote forests there, now invading American cities. From rural farmlands to suburban neighborhoods, they're tearing up park lawns, destroying backyards, and creeping onto quiet streets. But the real devastation is unfolding across the country's farmland. Millions of acres of crops have been trampled, roots unearthed, and countless farmers left with nothing after harvest. With rapid reproduction and surprising intelligence, these invasive hogs are turning peaceful communities into battlegrounds. The United States is facing an unprecedented ecological crisis, and the invader is a species many once underestimated. We began the hunt early in the morning as a light mist still hung over the fields. Our dogs barked loudly, tracking every trace left in the soft earth. Their growls echoed through the sparse forest, signaling that the invaders were near. Before long, the first wild boar emerged from a thick patch of brush, massive, muscular, with wild, blazing eyes. But in just a few swift moments, thanks to the coordination between man and dog, the beast was cornered. A single shot rang out quick, clean, precise. The first one was down. And we knew this battle had only just begun. We continued moving to a new area, pushing deeper into the wild terrain. And once again, success followed. Another trail, another encounter, another boar taken down. Each step forward brought fresh tracks, fresh challenges, and more victories. The momentum was on our side, and the hunt pressed on. In this new area, the wild boars were smarter and far more aggressive. They moved with caution, tested the wind, and even tried to outmaneuver our dogs. It was clear we were dealing with tougher, more cunning opponents. But the hunters were no strangers to this game. Seasoned and sharp-eyed, they read the terrain like a map and anticipated every move. One by one, the boars fell. No matter how fierce they were, they couldn't match the experience and precision of the men who had hunted these lands for years. But just as the team began to think they had the upper hand, something changed. Deep within the thickets, they stumbled upon fresh signs footprints larger than any they'd seen before, and trees marked with deep gouges. One of the dogs began to whimper, ears pinned back. Something gore, someone was watching. Moments later, a massive shadow burst out from the underbrush. It was the alpha boar, enormous, scarred, and terrifyingly fast. With a guttural roar, it charged straight at the group, forcing even the most seasoned hunters to step back. The first shot missed. The second only grazed its side. Dust flew, dogs barked furiously, and for a moment, chaos reigned. But the lead hunter calm steady took one breath, aimed and fired. The beast stumbled, let out a final grunt, then collapsed into the dirt. Silence followed, heavy, almost reverent. It was over. Or so they thought. Even with all their cunning and brute strength, the wild boars were no match for the relentless pursuit of the hunters. Each one tried a different trick circling back, hiding in tall grass, even using the terrain to set ambushes. But nothing worked. One by one they fell. The dogs, tireless and sharp-nosed, flushed them out from impossible hiding spots. The hunters, reading every sign in the dirt, moved like shadow squiat, precise and unyielding. For every desperate charge or sudden escape, there was a swift answer, a well-placed shot, a coordinated takedown. No matter how sly the boars became, they couldn't escape the fate that awaited them. This wasn't just a hunt. It was a message. No invader, no matter how clever, would go unchecked. Not here. Aside from using rifles, there's another highly effective method for dealing with these clever, wild boar steel cage traps. These aren't ordinary traps. They're large, heavy-duty enclosures designed to lure and capture entire groups at once. Baited with food and carefully placed near known travel paths, the cages wait silently as night falls. Infrared cameras monitor every movement. Once a group steps inside it, drawn by the irresistible scent, the door slams shut with a thunderous clang. No shots fired, no blood spilled, just cold, calculated capture. It's a game of patience and precision, and when done right, even the smartest boars don't stand a chance. That night, the team set up one of the largest cage traps at the edge of a field recently torn apart by rooting. They scattered fermented corn inside a scent wild boars simply couldn't resist. Then, they mounted an infrared camera nearby and retreated into the tree line, watching from a distance as darkness swallowed the land. Hours passed. At first, there was nothing but wind and crickets. Then movement. A lone boar emerged. sniffing the air cautiously. Seconds later, more followed. A whole sounder. Mothers, juveniles, and one massive male. They approached the trap slowly, suspicious but hungry. One stepped inside, then two, then five. The lead hunter, eyes locked on the camera feed, waited. Timing was everything. Too early, and the rest would scatter. Too late, and they might turn back. Then it happened. Every last one had entered. With a flick of the remote, the steel gate dropped. Boom! The startled grunts echoed through the night, followed by a chorus of thrashing and panic. But it was over. 12 wild boars, including the alpha, caught without a single shot. That night, the hunters didn't celebrate with noise or cheers. Just quiet nods, a sense of control reclaimed one trap at a time. Whether by rifle or by trap, the fight against invasive wild boars goes on. Each one taken down is a step toward reclaiming the land, the crops, and the peace. And in this silent war, the hunters never back down. In the shadows of abandoned fields, under the quiet veil of rural America's nights, there are sounds only those close to nature would recognize. The rustle of dry grass being trampled, a low hiss like the wind but heavy and close to the ground, and then a deep grunt that feels like the earth itself is being torn apart. These are the sounds signaling a threat's arrival, the invasive wild hog. Wild hogs, or feral hogs, are no strangers to many rural areas. But few could have predicted that these once domesticated animals would escape their pens, thrive in the wild, adapt to harsh conditions, and become one of the most dangerous, invasive species America has ever faced. Unchecked by natural predators and free from human control, wild hogs spread like weeds after a rainstorm, but the consequences they leave behind aren't just barren patches of land. They threaten the collapse of both agricultural and urban ecosystems. These creatures possess traits that make them a true nightmare. Weighing up to 150, 200 pounds, capable of running at speeds of 30 miles per hour, and with an extraordinary reproductive rate, a sow can produce 4 to 6 piglets per litter. 2 to 3 litters a year. Wild hogs don't just spread, they explode in population. Herds can number in the dozens, and they move like a wrecking crew. Wherever they go, the soil is churned, crops are uprooted, soil microorganisms are disrupted, and everything is left in ruins. Crops are their first target. Fields of corn, wheat or soybeans, the fruits of months of hard labor, can be destroyed in a single night by a hungry herd. They don't just eat, they dig, trample and root for tubers and larvae, leaving behind deep pits, jagged scars and barren soil unfit for planting. A farmer in Oklahoma once said bitterly, "They leave nothing but despair. The rows I planted with sweat and tears, they destroy in minutes." But what makes these animals truly terrifying isn't confined to rural areas. Over the past decade, wild hogs have begun encroaching on urban spaces. Park lawns, children's playgrounds, golf courses, and even residential backyards have become their targets. At night, security cameras in suburban neighborhoods capture unbelievable footage. Massive wild hogs lumbering over fences, tearing through trash cans, uprooting flower beds, and even chasing pets or attacking people if they feel threatened. More than once, authorities have had to intervene after panicked residents called in, "There's a monster in my backyard." And it's no exaggeration. Adult wild hogs, with their dark, bristly hair, glowing red eyes in the night, and curved tusks like daggers, could easily be mistaken for creatures from a sci-fi movie. Wild hogs aren't deterred by streetlights or car horns. They've been recorded crossing highways, causing dozens of serious traffic accidents in Texas and Georgia. No fence can stop them. They're patient, cunning, and quick learners. Some even avoid infrared cameras or refuse to enter traps if they sense anything suspicious. In nature, intelligence is a survival tool. In this case, it's a weapon against humans. And the scariest part? The silence they bring. Unlike other invasive species that announce their presence like starlings, brown snakes, or insects, wild hogs come at night quiet but relentless. By the time you notice, it's too late. Your garden is unrecognizable, your field is torn apart, and the damage runs into thousands of dollars all in a single night. Wild hogs are the perfect invaders, strong as beasts, cunning as predators, and as dangerous as a plague. They don't destroy out of instinct, but as if they have a strategy. Every place they pass through is a warning that nature, once disrupted, will retaliate in ways no one could foresee. And this is just the beginning of the story. The next part will reveal details about the hardest hit areas and why, despite all efforts, humans have yet to stop the advance of these creatures. After nights of silent destruction, people started asking, just how far have wild hogs spread, and what have they destroyed? The answer isn't simply crops or neighborhoods. It's a long list stretching across states, from vast farms to children's playgrounds, from remote forests to crowded suburbs or unwilling battlegrounds in the war against this invasive species. In Texas, the situation is so severe it's almost a part of daily life. With over 3 million wild hogs, nearly a third of the US total, Texas is the epicenter of this ecological storm. From the eastern plains to the western mountains, no place is safe. Livestock ranches rebuild fences weekly as hogs repeatedly knock them down. Fields of corn, soybeans, and even cattle grazing pastures are torn up beyond use. In the San Antonio area, one farmer reported losing over 60% of his summer yield in just 4 days. All evidence pointed to a herd of wild hogs caught on nighttime cameras. Georgia and Alabama, southern states with humid climates and fertile soil, are also seen as promised lands by wild hogs. They swarm peach orchards, destroying roots, eating unripe fruit, and digging pits that ruin irrigation systems. Not just crops, but chickens, ducks, rabbits, and other small livestock mysteriously disappear. For many small-scale farming families, the arrival of wild hogs is tantamount to bankruptcy. In California, where people picture lush vineyards in Napa Valley or thriving vegetable fields in Central Valley, wild hogs have a different strategy. Hiding in urban-adjacent forests by day and raiding farms at night. While wineries plan harvests, a herd can sweep in, devouring ripe grapes overnight. Worse, their tracks and feces cause many areas to fail food safety standards, multiplying financial losses far beyond physical damage. But it's not just agriculture. Wild hogs challenge urban infrastructure too. In suburban Atlanta, families report hogs appearing in backyards, grazing lawns, breaking fences, and causing dogs to bark incessantly. One mother recounted a terrifying moment when, preparing to take her kids to school, she found a hog the size of a cow lounging on her lawnette, didn't run, didn't flinch, just stared at her with glowing red eyes. Parks and preserves aren't spared either. At Florida's Everglades National Park, conservationists report large numbers of wild hogs digging up soil, eating rare bird eggs, and destroying mangrove forests. They erode soil and ruin habitats for dozens of protected native species. The situation is so severe that some areas have closed to visitors for hog eradication efforts. Another unavoidable issue is road safety. With their massive size and nocturnal habits, wild hogs cause thousands of accidents annually. They dart onto highways, crashing into cars and causing drivers to lose control. Some accidents are so severe they claim human lives all caused by a fearless hog. Even more alarming is the disease risk. Wild hogs carry dangerous pathogens, from African swine fever to leptospirosis and parasitic worms. These can spread to livestock and, in some cases, to humans through food or close contact. This forces the livestock industry to ramp up biosecurity, costing millions annually. The spread of wild hogs is no longer just one group's problem. It's a comprehensive multi-sector crisis affecting agriculture, transportation, healthcare, conservation, and public safety. They don't just cause material damage, they sow fear, anxiety, and a growing sense of helplessness across society. Experts have warned, if we don't control this species in the next few years, no part of America will be safe. The question is, how will humans respond? Can we stop a creature so stubborn, intelligent, and prolific that it outpaces what any ecosystem can handle? The answer, at least part of it, lies in the next section. Defensive measures, smart trapping technology, and the weapons humans are forced to wield to protect their land, families, and crops. After all the losses and panic, humans can't just stand by. From farmers who've lost entire harvests to environmental engineers, from professional hunters to state authorities, an uneasy alliance has formed. The sole objective: halt the spread of invasive wild hogs. This war is not simple. The enemy isn't an easily controlled creature, but millions of intelligent, fast, and hyper-reproductive animals surpassing any native wildlife. To fight back, humans have combined modern technology, traditional skills, and high-powered weapons. The first step is understanding hog behavior. They typically emerge at dusk or night, hiding by day in dense brush, riverbanks, or low-traffic areas. They don't stick to one territory, but roam toward food sources. Based on this, communities have deployed 24/7 monitoring systems with infrared cameras and motion sensors. In Texas, groups like the Feral Hog Task Force use night-flying drones to map herd movements, analyzing and predicting their paths. This data is shared through local farmer networks, helping them identify high-risk areas to set traps or prepare defenses. Trapping wild hogs is an art. A simple pit or cage won't do. Hogs learn quickly if one is caught, the rest won't return. So people use smart trap circular enclosures with remote control gates operated via smartphone. Only when the entire herd is inside does the operator close the gate, maximizing efficiency. But for large herds, traps aren't always enough. When destruction spirals out of control, the only option left is controlled hunting. And here's the question: what kind of firearm can stop these beasts? Comparison of wild hog hunting weapons. AR-15, 223 Remington. Pros: lightweight, easy to handle, fast firing rate. Cons: limited stopping power, unlikely to down an adult hog with one shot, risk of wounding rather than killing, making the animal flee and become more dangerous. R-10.308 Winchester. Pros: superior power, high penetration, can drop a large hog with one accurate shot. Cons: heavier, significant recoil, not ideal for beginners. Shotgun 12-gauge slug. Pros: devastating at close range, effective in dense forests or brush. Cons: short range, less effective against distant or fast-moving targets. Handgun, pistol, only used as a last resort. Low stopping power and poor accuracy in field conditions. Dedicated rifles, bolt action .30-06, .300 Win Mag. For professional hunters, used for selective kills or long-range shots with clear lines of sight. In parts of Texas, helicopters have even been deployed to track and eliminate herds moving through forests and fields. However, this costly solution is only viable for large-scale campaigns with state approval. But the issue isn't just about weapons. Winning this war requires large-scale cooperation between communities, long-term government commitment, and a shift in societal perspective. Hunting can't be left to a few gun enthusiast sites. A collective effort to protect habitats, food supplies, and public safety. Some states have introduced programs like year-round, unlimited hog hunting permits, bounties for each hog killed, subsidies for farmers to install cameras and traps. Yet many argue these efforts are too slow. While humans hold meetings, wild hogs invade hundreds more acres of farmland. This is no longer just a rural issue. It's a profound lesson in ecological imbalance, showing how a seemingly harmless animal can upend the natural order when unleashed from its limits. Don't let the dumb, clueless look on wild boars' faces fool you. With their sluggish gait and lazy eyes, they might seem harmless, just stray animals wandering around in search of food. But the truth is far more dangerous. Beneath that foolish exterior lies a destructive instinct, fierce survival skills, and a level of stubbornness that can bring entire farms to ruin, especially when they travel in herds. Wild boars are mostly nocturnal. Under cover of darkness, they quietly slip through fences and hedges, then swarm into fields like a wave of destruction. They don't eat much, but their path of damage is relentless, rooting through soil for tubers, trampling young crops, ripping through rows of corn for a few scraps. Vegetable beds are flattened, bean stalks uprooted, and within hours, what was once a thriving field becomes a scarred wasteland. What's worse is they rarely come alone. One boar is a nuisance. 10 or 20 is a nightmare. They're smart, cautious, and hard to catch. Electric fences, noise alarms, even patrols can't always stop them. Farmers lose not only their harvests, but often spend thousands of dollars annually repairing the aftermath and reinforcing boundaries, all while living in fear of the next nightfall. In some areas, villagers stay up all night in shifts, building traps, setting up infrared cameras, hoping to catch them early. Yet despite all efforts, there are still nights when the boars show up unannounced and destroy the promise of an entire season's work. For these hard-working farmers, the loss isn't just financial ease, the heartbreak of watching months of labor vanish in a single night. We set out just as the sun dipped behind the mountains, leaving the sky painted in a dull ash grey. Slung across each of our shoulders was a rifle no for senseless killing, but to protect what little remained of the crops, the land, and the hope, the wild boars had become a true nightmare. They didn't just tear up fields, they spread fear and despair across entire farming communities that depended on every stalk of corn, every row of vegetables, every root in the soil. As night fell, we moved deeper into the ravaged fields where footprints and broken stems were all that remained. The silence was haunting only. Our footsteps and tense breathing broke the stillness. Then suddenly, from the brush ahead, a large boar emerged. Its eyes glowed red in the beam of a flashlight, like twin embers. A single gunshot rang out clean and fast. The first one was down. Then came the second, the third. With each boar that fell, it wasn't victory. We felt it was a fragile piece of peace being restored. Every time we pulled the trigger, we thought of the farmers waiting on a harvest, the children counting kernels of corn on the porch, the quiet night without the fear of destruction. This wasn't just a hunt, it was a mission to hold on to some sliver of order in a world where nature had turned against us. We moved on to another area, where fresh signs of wild boars were scattered across the damp soil. Uprooted dirt, small trees knocked over, deep hoofprints stretching in long rose-clear evidence that a large herd had recently passed through. The air felt thick with unease, as if the entire field was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. It was obvious. This area had more boars, larger groups, and likely more aggression. We split into smaller teams, quietly advancing into zones with the heaviest activity. Every step was calculated. Each movement, deliberate tone, careless sound, could scatter the herd in an instant. Eyes sharp, ears tuned to the faintest rustle. We listened to the wind and watched every shifting shadow. The fields had become a battleground in waiting, and we were the silent soldiers moving in before the chaos. No one spoke. We communicated only through glances and hand signals. Even the soft rustling of leaves made our hearts race. Though we had faced wild boars many times before, each encounter was different. These animals were growing smarter, more alert, and more dangerous. Still, we knew what was at stake. The crops, the land, and the families depending on us. We didn't back down, not now, not here. Fortunately, on this wild boar hunting trip, we weren't alone. Alongside us were our brave hunting dogs, tireless, loyal, and incredibly courageous companions. From the very start, they were already hard at work, sniffing the air, listening closely, and reacting instantly to any sign of nearby boars. Sometimes, all it took was a faint rustle or a subtle breeze carrying a strange scent, and their keen noses would pick it up, warning us without hesitation. When we moved into dense, overgrown areas where humans hesitated to tread, the dogs charged in first, fearless and focused. They dove into thorny underbrush, tracked the faintest traces, and led the team straight toward our targets with incredible precision. More than once, their barking pierced the silence of the night, signaling that a wild boar was near. Thanks to those alerts, we were able to act quickly, preparing ourselves for sudden encounters. But they weren't just scouts, they were guardians. These dogs stayed close, alerting us to danger and helping to prevent surprise attacks when a cornered boar tried to fight back. They never strayed from our sides, ready to protect us at all costs. In the tensest moments, hearing their panting beside us gave us strength and courage to press on. Thanks to them, this hunt was not only more successful, but also safer and filled with a deep sense of teamwork. We pushed forward once again, this time into a completely different kind of terrain, a vast, swampy area where the ground was soft, waterlogged and dense with thick vegetation. It wasn't an easy place for humans to navigate, but for wild boars, it was a perfect hideout. Every step we took sank slightly into the muddy earth, slowing us down, but it also revealed clear signs of activity. Long skid marks, deep hoof prints, and patches of churned up mud that told us the boars were here and often. The air was heavy with humidity and the sharp, earthy scent of decay rising from the swamp floor. Traces of animal musk lingered, driving our hunting dogs into a frenzy. They pulled hard on their leads, sniffing the air and guiding us through thick underbrush and tall reeds that reached above our heads. This swamp had countless hiding spots, pockets of water-ringed grass, scattered mud mounds, and narrow trails just wide enough for a boar to slip through. Tracking them here was 10 times harder. But in the hardest places, the best chances often lie. We knew the boars preferred terrain like this to rest, to breed, and to stay far from human reach. One wrong move could alert the entire herd and send them fleeing into the dark. But if we stayed patient and moved smart, we had a real shot. Tired but focused, we held formation. Mud covered our boots and clothes, but our eyes burned with determination. The real showdown we knew was likely to happen right here among the muck and the silence. In addition to actively hunting wild boars with rifles, we also adopted another highly effective method, setting up steel cage traps. These traps are built from sturdy metal frames and equipped with automatic drop gates that close once a boar steps inside. We usually place them in strategic spots near trails, feeding grounds, or recently damaged fields where boar activity is frequent. Inside the traps, we bait them with irresistible items like fermented corn, ripe bananas, or livestock feed. Setting these traps requires careful planning and precision. Wild boars are incredibly clever. If they sense something is off, they'll steer clear. That's why we carefully camouflage each trap with branches and dry leaves and often install infrared cameras to monitor the site remotely. On the first night, they might sniff around cautiously, hesitant to enter. But once one boar steps inside, the others often follow. And when the entire group is inside, a single push of a remote button drops the gate clean, quiet, and safe. The biggest advantage of this method is reducing risk to humans while capturing multiple boars at once without triggering panic. It's a way to protect crops effectively while minimizing harm to people and livestock. In this long and ongoing battle, these simple-looking steel cages have become powerful tools quietly playing a crucial role in restoring peace to the farmlands.
Hi everyone, Welcome back to the channel. Today, I've got a story for you about how invasive wild hogs are wreaking havoc on crops right here in Oklahoma. The story begins on an early autumn morning when Mr. Smith, a seasoned farmer living in Lincoln County, Oklahoma, was taking a walk through his cornfield. The sun had just risen above the tree line to the east, casting a pale golden light over the tall stalks of corn that were beginning to turn amber. But instead of his usual sense of calm and satisfaction, a deep frown settled on his face. Several rows of corn had been trampled. The soil was churned up. A few irrigation pipes were bent out of shape. "Probably deer from last night," he muttered. Still, something didn't sit right. 2 days later, the damage had spread, this time into the neighboring soybean field. Weeds had been ripped out of the ground, and fresh ruts scarred the earth like it had been torn up by a plow. That's when Mr. Smith started to suspect this wasn't the work of some small critter. A few neighbors suggested he set up an infrared camera to see what was really going on after dark. It only took one night for the mystery to unravel. A herd of wild hogs, at least 20 of them, some weighing over 200 pounds, appeared on the screen. They moved in tight formation, grunting, digging, tearing through the field like living bulldozers. They tore up the soybeans, devoured young corn stalks, and showed no signs of fear or hesitation. That was the moment I realized I was no longer in control of my own land, Mr. Smith recalled. In Oklahoma, scenes like this are no longer uncommon. According to data from the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Oklahoma Farm Bureau, wild hogs have now been found in all 77 counties across the state. They were once scattered in remote southern and southwestern regions, but thanks to their explosive reproduction rate, each female can have 2 to 3 litters a year. With 4 to 10 piglets per litter, they've spread across the entire state in less than a decade. What's even more alarming is how smart and cunning they are. Wild hogs can alter their routines to avoid traps and steer clear of human patrols. They learn quickly. After being chased a few times, they begin entering fields through back routes, sneaking through fences like shadows. Mr. Smith once set up a large steel trap with bait that smelled irresistible, but the camera revealed the lead hogs standing outside, watching before turning away, almost as if they knew exactly what was going on. And the problem doesn't end with crops. One night in early September, one of Mr. Smith's young calves was found with a severe leg injury, bite marks that sank all the way to the bone. The vet confirmed it was the work of an adult wild boar, which can become dangerously aggressive when threatened or defending their young. After that night, Mr. Smith had to overhaul his entire operation, moving livestock pens closer to the house, installing electric fencing, but even that didn't stop the intrusions. Every night, he's jolted awake by the sound of hogs screeching in the fields. Sometimes, he switches on the floodlights, only to catch glimpses of black shapes darting off into the darkness. On other nights, he grabs his rifle and patrols the tree line, now riddled with deep, winding hoofprints, as if the beasts had claimed the land as their own. "I don't feel like this is my land anymore," he says. "It feels occupied," and Mr. Smith is far from alone. Hundreds of farmers across Oklahoma are facing the same nightmare. In Seminole County, one family stopped planting corn altogether after losing 3 straight harvests. In Grady County, a goat farmer lost nearly a third of his herd in just a month. The fear isn't just on the fields anymore. It's followed them into their homes, into their sleep. These are people who once believed that planting seeds and nurturing crops would always lead to a fair harvest. But wild hogs don't care about any of that. To them, the land is for digging, corn is for eating, and everything else, from irrigation lines to tents to ranch gates, is just an obstacle to be torn down. They don't get tired. Mr. Smith says, but they've taught me what exhaustion really feels like. The damage caused by wild hogs goes far beyond what the eye can see. Behind the churned-up soil, the flattened corn stalks, or the wounded calf lies a whole chain reaction, one that only farmers truly understand. Each planting season is a gamble, and after 3 months of relentless hog activity, Mr. Smith had started to lose big. Nearly 40% of his summer corn was gone, left as nothing but stumps, chewed down to the root, scattered like the wreckage of a storm. The soybeans, which he had hoped would salvage the season, fared no better. The seeds were dug up just days after being planted. He lost nearly $15,000 in a single harvest. "I'm one of the lucky ones," Mr. Smith said. "Some folks lose an entire year's income in a single week, and he's not exaggerating." According to the Oklahoma Feral Swine Control Program, the average damage caused by wild hogs to a medium-sized farm ranges from $4,000 to $10,000 per year. Excluding long-term impacts like ruined soil, broken irrigation systems, and damaged farm equipment. But the destruction doesn't end in the fields. At a nearby farm, the Henderson family had just rebuilt a herd of over 60 goats after 3 years of saving. In June, they lost 18 of them, attacked in the middle of the night by a pack of wild hogs. "I never imagined hogs could be that vicious," Mrs. Henderson recalled. "They don't just destroy, they kill to take over." One goat had its belly torn open. Others panicked, ran wild, and broke their necks charging into fences. And it's not just livestock. A report from the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation, ODWC, documented at least 14 human attacks by wild hogs in 2023 alone, including 3 cases that required hospitalization. In one incident near Ardmore, a 10-year-old boy was chased by a hog while playing in an open lot behind his house. Thankfully, his father fired a warning shot that scared the animals off. The event left the entire neighborhood shaken. Wild hogs also pose a serious disease threat. They carry numerous dangerous pathogens like pseudorabies, brucellosis, and gastrointestinal infections that can spread to both humans and livestock. Mr. Smith had to destroy an entire batch of hay after finding signs of hog urine. Just to be sure his cattle wouldn't get sick. "We're not just losing money," he said. "We're losing trust in the safety of the land we live on." And the damage doesn't stop there. It's reached the roads. On Highway 177 through Seminole County, a driver collided with a wild hog weighing nearly 330 pounds. The car was heavily damaged, though the driver escaped injury. According to the Oklahoma Department of Transportation, the state sees over 200 hog-related vehicle accidents each year, mostly at night or in the early morning when hogs are most active. Statewide, wild hogs are estimated to cause between $60 and $100 million in damage annually, including losses to crops, livestock, infrastructure, and environmental costs. And even that may be a conservative figure. You can't put a number on everything we've lost: our time, our labor, and our sense of security, Mr. Smith said. For many farmers like him, rural life, once peaceful and predictable, has turned into a constant state of alert. Gone are the days of quiet walks through the fields. Now it's sleepless nights, cautious steps through the underbrush, and silent prayers that the morning won't bring more destruction. You can replant the crops. You can replace the equipment. You can rebuild the fences, he sighed. But I don't know when or if I'll ever feel like I truly own this land again. Faced with the spread of this relentless invasive species, Mr. Smith and many other farmers came to a sobering realization. This wasn't just a temporary problem. It had become a war with no clear front lines, no announced end date, and absolutely no room for complacency. After nearly 3 seasons of devastating losses, Mr. Smith decided it was time to change tactics. No more just setting up fences or installing porch lights. Instead, he joined a local coalition known as the Feral Hog Task Force, a grassroots group where farmers, hunters, and environmental engineers shared strategies for tracking, trapping, and eliminating wild hogs more effectively. They placed infrared cameras around high-risk zones and deployed large steel traps with remote-triggered gates, ensuring that entire herds could be captured at once without tipping off the dominant sows or boars. One crisp autumn evening, Mr. Smith and 3 neighbors set up a trap deep in the northern woods of his property. For several nights, they baited the area with corn, observing the hogs' travel routes and behavior. On the 6th night, the camera captured a herd of over 30 hogs, led by a massive boar weighing nearly 450 pounds. A true beast. They waited, holding back. Then, on the 7th night, with the entire herd inside the trap, Mr. Smith hit the remote. The heavy metal gate crashed down with a thud that echoed through the trees. For the first time, he had captured an entire herd, and for the first time, he felt like he had a real shot at reclaiming his land. But the story didn't end there. So what if you catch one herd? Mr. Smith said at a community meeting. There are thousands more out there, and he's right. With their explosive reproduction, just one surviving pair can repopulate rapidly in a single season. That's why most isolated control efforts fail. Humans are reducing numbers while the hogs are multiplying exponentially. Oklahoma has tried scaling up its response. One measure involved testing a bait called kaput feral hog bait, containing warfarin, a blood thinner previously used in rat poison. Though approved by the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, kaput remains controversial due to concerns about harming non-target animals or pets that might feed on contaminated carcasses. Many communities, including Mr. Smith's task force, have refused to use chemicals, wary of turning a biological war into an ecological disaster. Professional hunters have also been contracted to cull hogs via helicopter, an approach used widely in Texas and slowly gaining ground in Oklahoma. But high costs and safety risks have limited its wider adoption. In the meantime, farmers like Mr. Smith continue to rely on themselves, patrolling at night with rifles, setting more traps, checking camera footage every morning, living in a state of constant vigilance. This isn't traditional farming anymore, he said. We're soldiers now. Soldiers in work shirts, fighting for the land we once just farmed. And yet, in the midst of this struggle, something remarkable began to emerge. Solidarity. Farmers who once kept to themselves started sharing footage, lending each other traps, and teaming up for nighttime hunts. There was no room for isolation anymore. The enemy, wild hogs, didn't care about property lines or farm signs. Mr. Smith has often wondered if the day will ever come when he can sleep through the night. No need to check the cameras or listen for rustling in the grass behind the house. But in time, he came to realize The goal isn't to end the fight. It's to learn how to live with it, with grit, with technology, and with a community that refuses to give in. I never thought I'd have to learn how to hunt hogs just to grow corn, he said with a bitter smile. But if that's what it takes to protect the land my father and grandfather built, then that's what I'll do.